let's just start with this coming out of the Senate. As you know, tomorrow is the deadline for a government shutdown. Is that correct? It is tomorrow, right? They had punted. And according to the New York Times, just moments ago, Senate leaders have neared a far-reaching agreement to set spending levels on military and domestic spending for the next 2 years, supposedly breaking the cycle of fiscal crises that have bedeviled the Capitol since last summer. The accord was also expected to include disaster relief for areas hit by last year's hurricanes and wildfires. And here's the deal. In the House, now, both in the House and in the Senate, it appears that Democrats are going to settle for a commitment from the Republican leadership. All right, just take it easy. That they will address some form of a DACA fix.
They really mean it this time.
Right. They really mean it this time. And in the House, the Freedom Caucus, led by Mark Meadows, has said, we will not vote to raise any domestic spending. Now, maybe they could find their way to funding the Pentagon more. Maybe not. Who knows? But that sets up a specific dynamic. If Paul Ryan cannot get the entire membership of his Republican caucus to vote, more or less the entire, to vote for some type of government funding bill, he will need to rely on some Democratic votes. Therefore, Nancy Pelosi has a certain amount of leverage. And as such, the Senate deal sparked immediate opposition from the leader of the House of Democrats, Representative Nancy Pelosi, who said she could not agree to any budget deal that was not accompanied by a promised debate over legislation to protect the fate of young immigrants brought to the country illegally as children known as dreamers. She went on to say the budget caps agreement includes many Democratic priorities with the disaster recovery package and dollar-for-dollar increases in defense and non-defense budget. So this goes all the way back to the sequester during the Obama years, where everybody thought, not everybody, but there was some type of thinking in Democratic circles that, oh, Obama's really faked these guys out. He's going to say, if you're going to cut domestic, you got to cut military spending, and they'll never go for that. And then guess what? They went for it. So this basically reverses that sequester to a certain amount, dollar for dollar increases in defense and non-defense budget. So we'll give you $1 to kill people, but we want $1 maybe to pay for children's health care at a community center. She goes on to say Democrats have secured hundreds of billions of dollars to invest in communities across America. There will be billions in funding to fight opioids, strengthen our veterans and the NIH to build job-creating rural infrastructure and broadband, and to fund access to childcare and quality higher education. I have not seen any breakdown of this bill to assess those claims, but a dollar-for-dollar increase in domestic spending to defense spending is, at the very least, that. However, again, she can't support it without a commitment from Speaker Ryan comparable to the commitment from Leader McConnell, which is, sort of silly.
What's the next phase after Lucy and the football?
Well, that's the whole point of Lucy and the football.
Yeah,
it just happens
just
over
endless.
and over and over again.
Okay.
I mean, look, there's not a lot of leverage when you are the party that is out of power. There's not a lot of leverage. And there's also a certain amount of fear that by getting too aggressive, and I'm not even sure what that would look like, theoretically, all of this could pass without any Democratic support, I guess, except for in the House. In the Senate. But you have 8 senators, maybe 10, who are nervous about their reelection. And in some weird ways, the idea now that wasn't present this time last year, that Democrats could actually take the Senate, and I think Ryan Grimm alluded to this a little bit yesterday, the idea now that Democrats could take the Senate has in some ways made them a little bit more timid. Which, look, it is always easier to operate with abandon if you don't think you have much to lose. And now there's a sense that they may have an opportunity to lose. I wouldn't approach it this way. I would get more aggressive. But
there is also the principle in sports, right? Like if you're playing not to lose, you tend to play more poorly. And also at a certain point, it's just like, I think especially for people like us, and not to personalize it, but to make at least the arguments we make, where we're constantly fending off all of these dumb arguments from all sides, and we are criticizing Democrats for all of their failures and all of their complacency and all of their sort of part of the problemness, but then also not indulging in dumb arguments either. It doesn't help.
It doesn't help. But it's also, the reality is that nobody's going to control Joe Manchin. There were reports that Joe Manchin was thinking about resigning, and I've never heard anybody's assessment, who I trust, that some other Democrat's going to win in West Virginia.
No, and Manchin's Manchin. That's a very distinct proposition. Like, I think you could say
Heitkamp might be Heitkamp, and Donnelly might be Donnelly. Once you get outside of 3 or 4 of them, then it starts making a little more sense that you increase the party discipline. But once you get past 3 or 4, it may make a difference anyways.
But I think the strategic, to me, it's more in like how Schumer's managing it and what his instincts are. Because for what it's worth, especially in senators, I think especially in minority, there's only so much power you can exert, and you can't accept like Manchin. You just accept like, look, it's better he caucuses with Democrats, and it's great he voted against the tax bill and healthcare repeal. Cool. And you don't expect that much more from him. But as a general kind of cohesive party, go for it.
Oh, yeah. No, I'm going for this.